You are listening to The Fortress. Welcome back, all you listeners in KDOV land. So I think I announced last week, this is going to be my last show, my last, appearance or recording of The Fortress. And I tried to think, well, what do I want to talk about? So I basically decided this show, I'm going to come right out and speak my mind. Before Pastor Keith panics, don't worry, I don't mean bad thoughts. But I think I've kind of gone into the way I think before on the show a few times. And I wanted to, first of all, start and open up with my Christian worldview. I may or may not have gone back a couple of shows ago, and I went into some detail about this. But I'm going to start there. But then I wanted to go into, in each segment, I'll have something, kind of to mention to the folks out there, what is the heaviest on my mind? Why do I look at things from the perspective that I do? How does my faith tie into that? What's important to me? How can you use that in your life? How can you find maybe a ray of hope in some of the things I have to say? I've tried to give people, an opportunity to hear what I say over the last, 6 months. I think I started doing this show in December, and I did want to open the show also before I get into my worldview and thank Pastor Keith for the opportunity that I've had. Doing this has been really neat. It's been kind of a cool experience. It's something I never knew I'd be able to do, and something I knew I'd never have the chance to do. And it's unique to hear your voice over the radio. First of all, granted, it's not local radio for me here in South Carolina, but when I go to the website for KDOV and can hear my voice right there, that's kind of neat. And so I've tried to use these past months to try to plant seeds in people, maybe give them a certain outlook on life that can give them hope. And of course, our hope, every single one of us, is Jesus Christ. And I thank Pastor Keith for, first of all, kind of giving me the courage to speak on here, to speak how God has touched my life, what God has opened my eyes to, or what I feel like God has opened my eyes to over the years. And through my perspective, through my law enforcement career, just through some of the blessings in my life, such as family and opportunity. So thank you again, Pastor Keith Harden, and just anybody associated with KDOV for giving me the chance to put my message out there. I do apologize again for having to leave the show. That training, it's kind of coming to fruition. All next month, especially, I will have different hours that will affect, and it's not necessarily the amount of time as much as the timing. I'll be working later in hours, and so my family time is affected if I continue to try to put the time and effort that it takes a person who's not tech savvy like me to do these shows. So thank you for those out there who've been listening. And with that, I wanted to just go ahead and maybe help some of you out there make sense of what you've heard from me so far. If this bores you, by all means, you can just ignore it. You turn the station, but I'm not trying to scare anybody away. But for the longest time, all the way back to when I was a little kid, my dad told me Something along the lines of, son, just do what makes sense. And so, to me, the Christian faith, Judeo-Christian principles, and the truth of Jesus Christ, it just makes sense to me. And I'll tell you why it makes sense to me. I'm going to just go through. I've done a lot of thinking about this over the years, and now did my dad come right out and tell me specific instruction or explanation to how to figure out what makes sense? No, he really didn't. I also have a funny quote to go along with this. My wife talked to me on the phone today, and she said, I kid you not, I quoted her. I put it on Facebook just so people knew. So I had documentation. She said, I wanted your opinion on this because you're the voice of reason in the family. All right, so that is kind of funny, right? But, I think I've been interpreting, doing just what makes sense and making sense of it my whole life. And my worldview has come about through what my dad told me. First thing that has almost always made sense to me regarding the world is the whole idea of a creation, a creator of this world, that everything seems to have design. Now, the greatest example to me of this, of course, this is just my opinion and my interpretation of my surroundings. The first time I went up in an airplane, and we're talking way up, when I flew my first flight, first time in an airplane flying was over the Atlantic Ocean, and I went to Israel. So up there in the plane, I get to see all of God's creation laid out underneath, before me. And to just think of that as some random accident, that doesn't compute. Does not compute. That's the way I kind of see things. That's how I saw it back then. That was my freshman year in college. But and so what I've kind of determined along the way, as far as design goes, and us being created, structure follows function. That's how I've always seen the world. I've seen, well, okay, if I want to make something, well, why am I making this something? It's going to have function. So what am I making it for? Well, that might determine how I design it. And there you go. There we are. We are God's creation. He wanted to create something in His image, but, well, what would be the purpose of that? And so, I've thought about this along the years too, and I can't help but wonder, well, if we are created in His image and we have egos and perhaps God would want our purpose to be to worship Him. I mean, after all, He gave us life. Now, a lot of society in the world, some people believe the opposite, that function always follows structure. But everything I look at, every object, plant, animal, person, geographical feature, you name it, I can probably come up with some reason for it being the way it is. I might not be right, but some function or purpose it seems to have. May be very dynamic and situational, but I think anyone who's good at creative thinking could do this. All right, so now the real kicker. If I believe that of all of this that was created, why did He create us? My fascination and addiction to stories of all kinds helped me take interest in discovering the myths and legends in theology and in pantheons, Greek mythology, especially as I entered my college years. And the religions of the Middle East, derived from the people of the book, as actually Islam refers to them, Those religions made the most sense to me. They seem to point to the purpose question the most. I mean, it stands to reason to me, if we were made in his image and we have egos ourselves, that he would maybe have an ego. And being the supreme being that designed all of it anyway, makes sense that we worship him. Oddly enough, Islam actually gets this, but that's where what makes sense stops for them. And actually, Judaism, they emphasize this as well. But of all the religions that I've read about, that try to explain the supremacy of one God, of all the other religions that try to explain purpose for just about everything, from the war to violence to corruption, the existence of evil and good, uniqueness, variety, peace, they all seem to truly lack the ability to explain one idea, one concept. And I've talked about that concept on this show. And that is the concept of love. That idea is expressly explained, discussed in great detail by one man in history. That man happens to be Jesus Christ. The story of Jesus, told the way it is supposed to be, the truth of Jesus, is the only story, from the way I interpret it personally. When I connect it to the stories of the Jewish people, it best explains the ultimate function to our structure, to our purpose, the ultimate purpose for our existence. It includes the best explanation for the concept and existence of love. That's the greatest difference between Christianity and then Islam and Judaism. The latter two emphasize obedience to God and his sovereignty. We should emphasize that. However, one of those happens to emphasize obedience and then the sovereignty of a false god, but I'll get into that in a later segment. But Christ emphasizes love like nobody else. Yes, men have corrupted the teachings. Yes, Christians have screwed up along the way. But if you come to the conclusion that I have about the purpose of existence, then it's easier to come to another conclusion, that everything that does happen happens for a reason. So I will follow Jesus and his teaching, and I will hold the Bible as my guide. I will listen to those who do not seem to persuade through selfish means, but through pointing back to the word in which I believe, the Holy Bible. So there you have it. That's a glimpse into the deep and weird thinking and even the operations of my mind, my worldview. Maybe you can hear it and still use it for good in some way. Maybe you can use that, interpret some of the things I said. It can give you a different outlook on life. Maybe you can go and discover more for yourself by picking up the Holy Bible. So that's Jason Fort's Christian worldview. Well, that's part of it. We're going to go to a little break. Just a fun break. I'm going to have some fun with the breaks today. And when we come back, we'll actually, hear a few thoughts of mine about the concept of self-defense.
Well, hey, Bob. You know what I was just looking at? I was just looking at Mr. Jason's new website. Have you taken a look at it yet? No, Leroy, I honestly haven't taken a gander at it yet. Shh, here he comes now. Hey, fellas, what are y'all up to? How'd y'all get here? Wait a minute, I never see y'all around here. What are you doing? Well, we just thought we'd come by and visit, pay you a visit, and your laptop just happened to be open right in front of us. And Mr. Jason, we opened it up, went to your website. Yeah, I made a few changes. Love for anybody to stop by, www.jason-e-fort.com. Visit the blog posts. See the videos. There's a new video page with a lot of links to videos that I've made. Who knows, you might even run into the occasional Bob or Leroy take. These two fellows that I happen to be talking to right here. That's right. You better mention us, Mr. Jason. We've been doing it for you now. Been putting your name out there, telling about your website. You guys listen. This author's on to something. He's talking about Jesus. He's talking about good things in life. He's talking about dangerous things out there that although we should pay attention, Jesus has our back. As long as we got faith in him, we can make it through anything. What you think about that, Mr. Jason? I couldn't have said it better myself, Bob. That's right, Mr. Jason. Well, okay, we'll leave you alone now. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you, but we'll catch you later. Peace out.
So here we are again. Why do I want to talk about self-defense? If we go back a few months, I actually did a whole show on self-defense, and I related it to building walls. There was a little political tie in there, yes. But why would I want to share about self-defense? Well, I didn't go back and take the time to listen, but I have always been one who just felt the need or urge to protect, to be protective. And I have always felt like God made me that way for a reason. I don't necessarily know that reason, but I do feel like, there's a reason for it. And, I was the oldest of three boys. I was the oldest of three brothers, and my two younger brothers were always very important to me, and I was very protective of them. Was I always nice to them both? No. I messed up. But nobody messed with my brothers except me. That was kind of the mentality I had. But I was always a protector in sports. I always liked being on defense. In basketball, I was a much better defender than I was a scorer. I could make steals, I could block shots, I loved rebounding, but I was very defensive. Very defensive. When I played soccer as a little kid, I always wanted to be on defense. And I was more aggressive as a defender. But, go further on. And, I've mentioned, I've done a whole show before on being a peacemaker. Helping resolve conflict peacefully. I've always, tried to do that when I kept my wits about me. I've also mentioned on here before that I have a bad temper. That's something I had to learn to get by over the years. I had to get past that. I couldn't have done that without my knowledge of Jesus Christ. I couldn't have done that without the knowledge of forgiveness. I couldn't have done that without God. So how does self-defense apply to my faith? Well, I've mentioned it before too. Yes, Jesus tells us to turn the other cheek. But he does not say just be a doormat. And yes, there is something to be said for those who become martyrs and who die for their faith, who die for what they believe in. But does that mean we just willingly open ourselves up to danger? See, I don't think so. Some people have asked, well, what about church safety? Why? I started up a church safety team at our church. I'm the only police officer in our church setting, at our particular church body. So I started a church safety team after talking with the pastor. So people are like, well, why a church safety team? Aren't you a little paranoid? Don't you trust God? Yes, I do trust God, but I also know who the Bible describes as the Lord of the air. I know who's here with us. I know who wants to destroy God's kingdom. I know who wants to put obstacles in the way of all of us. I know who wants to hurt us. And that's not God, that's Satan. And when I saw something as horrible and horrific as the Emmanuel church shooting in Charleston, I was like, holy mackerel, we've got to do something. Because we really are a soft target. Because those good people in Charleston welcomed that shooter amongst them, in their midst. And he shot him. And there wasn't a single person who had their guard up in that situation. And that's sad and it's tragic. And I don't blame those people at all because they were doing the right thing. But what if somebody were there whose guard was up a little bit and who said, hey, wait a minute. Something's not right here. So I talked to my pastor. We started up a church safety team. But do I trust God? Yes. I read but I think one of the things we can do to help in defending ourselves is pray. I think we should pray. We should pray for safety, and we should pray that God keeps us safe. But, I just, some people have asked, well, do the ends justify the means? Here's what I want you to think about. If you're listening, consider how a violent threat may impact the world for Christ. Where does that violent threat come from? Is it someone who is just misunderstood? Do you have time to evaluate that? How urgent is that threat? What, if any, impact will it have on Christ's kingdom? God is in control. Yes, I know that. But if I happen to act to stop a violent threat, if that makes me imperfect and simple, when I decide to protect someone from a threat that I consider evil, so be it. That is the choice I make. My Lord and my God will be my judge, and I will answer for it. But, again, why did God give me this urge to protect? Now, of course, I want to try to solve things peacefully. I think there's a reason why that's innate as well. But just because you want to protect yourself, that doesn't make you, a bad person. Again, I think we all have to ask ourselves, do the ends justify the means? As far as the actions we take. And of course, justification is another issue altogether. But I do think, and I strongly recommend self-defense without, of course, lethal force. Without, if someone else is trying to kill somebody or trying to kill me, but I know there's a way to stop them without killing them, by all means, I'm going to do it. But if they are using the deadliest threat possible, I am going to also act in defense and protect, even if that means I commit the sin of killing. See, that's a touchy subject for people, and I know that. But try to put yourself in people's positions and then ask yourself this: where would we be without people like law enforcement? Where would we be without the military? Who do you think would take advantage of that situation the most? I'm going to quote the old church lady here. Could it be Satan? Yeah. He'd take full advantage. There's a reason why we have protectors in the world. If you are not one of them, that's okay. But understand that there's a purpose to self-defense. You can learn certain ways to defend yourself without harming other people. I go back to, I did a great Bible study this week, a little devotional that actually Pastor Keith has included me on, and it's been pretty neat, but it was all about prayer. And, I really, one thing that opened my eyes was it's kind of my responsibility to pray for things that are needed. If I recognize something as dangerous, if I recognize something as bad for the church, it's my duty to pray for that. If I recognize potential threats out there by evil people, it is my duty to pray for God's help in that situation. That is also self-defense. In different laws, different ways they're articulated. Self-defense can also refer to acting in defense of oneself or others. So I think self-defense is not only applicable to, me personally. I think it can apply to you folks out there individually, but it can also apply to us as a nation taking care of ourselves, defending ourselves from the threats out there. So these international issues we hear about, this foreign policy stuff, and again, I'll get into a whole segment on politics because I told you, this is my last show. And I can tie politics in with my faith. It's very intertwined. But there's a reason for that. And so all this nonsense with radical Islam, which to me is not all that different from Islam, and I'll get more into that a little later too. But you have North Korea. These are real threats. So we have a military in place to defend ourselves. The Lord, our Creator, God created us with certain inalienable rights, as our founding fathers said, and that was the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life. So that's where I wanted to come at self-defense. Wanted to just speak my mind on that. Again, that gives you a deeper look into the mind of Jason. Use that however you want. Again, I'd always like to hear from you guys. Despite the fact I'm quitting this radio show, I can still be reached. I told Pastor Keith I am not giving up the writing at all. That's my passion. That's my true passion. So feel free to read my blog posts still. I will continue those. Every now and then I'll probably do a video blog post because that doesn't take quite as much effort as video or audio recordings. And I can do like a 5-minute spiel on something. And basically it'll be one of my blogs just in a video form. But, and that's going to be just on occasion. But by all means, I want to hear from you guys. www.jason-e-fort.com. You could actually add /contact or just go to the website. Contact me. I'd love to hear from you. Going to go to another break. And when I come back, we might dive into a little bit of politics.
You there, with the fishhook in the bill of your hat. What is your name? Hey, me? Well, heck, my name's Bob. What's your name? Oh, my name is Vladimir. So pleased to meet you. I couldn't help but notice you have some kind of book holding in your lap. What is that book? It looks very familiar to me. Oh, this is a book from that new author, Jason Fort. Jason E. Fort's his name. And I tell you what, man, this guy, he writes about assassins and lawlessness and martial law and all sorts of crazy stuff and all sorts of action. Yet somehow he finds a way to talk about Jesus. You believe that? Ah, yes, I am familiar with this Jason. Yes, Jason does write about Jesus. He writes about God. He writes about good messages. But you have to read between the lines. You have to get past all of the Russian mobsters and the assassins and the radical Islamic terrorists and all of those fun things. But yes, you are right. I found an easy way to find out more about his books. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about his website. Yep, all you people out there in Dove Creek, Colorado, in Canada, and anywhere else out there, you just go to www.jason-e-fort.com. You can learn everything you want to know, and you won't believe this. But the very first book, now he's written 5 of them, 5 novels. If you want to check him out, very first book is free digital download. His ebook is free, y'all. You go check him out. Vladimir, hey, you want to borrow this book? I think that is the one I do not have yet. Yes, I will take it if you are done. All right, guys, that's it. That's it for me and Vladimir. I hope you guys have a good day.
So, why do politics matter? Now, I know this is a Christian radio station, and this is primarily a Christian radio show, even though it's the last one. But, and this is just in my opinion, my humble opinion, politics do matter. Politics are related to what goes on in the world, of course, and our impact is supposed to be on the world. And politics of different regions and the politics, between countries even, can affect our ability to impact the world, but they can't really affect God's ability to impact the world. So, it's kind of a strange topic to even talk about or think about, because I guess, in speaking from God's perspective, they are irrelevant. And should we worry about them? No. But I think we should be aware. I think we should be aware that, if we don't pay attention, it's kind of like being oblivious to your surroundings in a dangerous area. If there are dangers around you and you're not paying attention, those dangers are going to affect you. Well, we live in a dark and fallen world, and if we don't pay attention to the politics around us, it can definitely affect us for the worse. However, God prepares us if we accept Him for who He is, if we live a faithful life and we pray regularly, we ask for His guidance and wisdom, then we can pay attention and we can, work in such a fashion through life to where we either don't let politics affect us personally, or we can actually use the politics to our advantage to help impact the world for the better. Do I think we have taken it a step too far? Do I think we have maybe let politics take too much of a front seat, really too much of a presence in our lives? I do, including mine. But I do think they matter, as in we shouldn't just write them off, just not pay attention to anything going on, because that sets you up for complacency. And see, I am of the belief that God gave us gifts. He gave us minds to think. He gave us hearts to feel. He gave us feelings and emotions. He gave us compassion. He gave us the ability to do things. He gave us the ability to do things about things that are happening here in this world. See, I don't think God wants us to be strung along like little puppets on strings. Otherwise, we wouldn't have free will. Did our free will mess things up in this world? Yeah, that's our fault. So, I mean, what's my take on the political events that happen around? Well, I think you should at least, if you're going to have any political allegiances, just consider this. Do you want to support someone who just has personal agendas? Or do you want to support someone to lead and to help manage things in a respectful way that also kind of goes to the side of morality and ethics? See, in my opinion, there are some political leanings that lean much further away from morals and a code of ethics. They lean much more towards making right and wrong pretty relative. I've talked about moral relativism. So there's no absolute truth in some political leanings, whereas more conservative values value things like morality, like right versus wrong, and like truth. See, where do you draw the line if you don't embrace truth? How do you determine who's right and who's wrong, and what's right and what's wrong? It suddenly becomes a free-for-all. Anarchy. So I know this is kind of a touchy subject, and politics can be iffy to even mention. But were there politics in the Bible? A little bit. Just a little bit. There was nationalism. There was God's chosen nation. There was Israel. There were monarchies. So politics has had its place in the world and in history. But I don't think we should be oblivious to it. But again, I will confess, we can let it be too prevalent in our conversations. Maybe I'm doing it here. I don't know. This is about me just kind of telling you where I come from and how I view the world, though, and I can't help but include this. And my eyes have been open to more of the darkness and evil in this world ever since I got into law enforcement. But I think the good Lord gives many of us gifts of discerning what's good and what's not. What is evil and what's not evil. So, what's my take on political events and their effect on faith and Christianity? Well, it exists. It's there. There's an impact. There's a correlation even sometimes. But we shouldn't let it worry us. But we need to be aware, because there are things out there. Oh, let's say a little thing called Islam. A lot of the pundits out there, all of the global thinkers that want you to embrace the idea of a one world government, conveniently, they kind of side with Islam, and that they want to say that Islam is a religion. Well, yeah, there are religious tendencies to it, but Islam really is a form of control. It's a political ideology that leads to control. And it's obsessive control. And the practice of Islam, if you go into the Quran and if you read the hadiths, when you read about Muhammad's life, he was OCD. And not only that, but he talks about, divine revelation of Allah. That man was off his rocker. This was not divine revelation. This was probably demonic possession. Now, I don't know that for sure, but I have a strong feeling. See, in my opinion, I see the ideology of Islam as the greatest long-term threat to humanity. Now, I'll go back to what I was just saying about politics. And I mean, in a sense, it's not a threat because, well, we know the good guys win. We know when Jesus comes back, evil will be wiped out. So in a sense, it's not a threat, but just the last remaining overwhelming presence of evil on earth before the second coming of Christ. Do I know that for sure? No, I don't. This is just a feeling I have. But again, some people read my novels and they're like, are you some prophet? I'm like, whoa, no, I'm not a prophet. But I have seen some just possibilities when I look at my surroundings and the world events and I go, man, what might happen if this happens? Where could that lead? Oh, I don't know if I like that. You know, some people would say I'm paranoid. Well, again, I'm not paranoid. I just believe in caution and being better safe than sorry. You know, relate back to what I believe about self-defense. I can't just ignore threats. I wasn't born that way. And I always had this strange fascination with eschatology and end times. And if you combine that with my sense to defend or protect, it kind of makes me feel responsible to tell people what I think is dangerous. To tell people about the threats that I foresee or sense or think could really be a problem in the near future. It's like, I guess, kind of like a watchman. What do you guys think? How does politics affect you? Do you let it affect you? If not, do you want to give me advice? Please send me an email. Shoot me a line. Shoot me messages. You can also find me on Facebook. You know, if you're friendly enough and you're a trustworthy person, shoot me a friend request, Jason Edward Fort. That's my personal Facebook. I don't mind putting that out there. I got a lot of friends anyway. So, that's kind of my take on politics. I hope Pastor Keith doesn't mind me sharing that. I do tend to be a little political. I have an opinion. I'm a pretty opinionated person. I have trouble keeping quiet, I guess. But it's tied closely with my values and what I find to be important. God, my family, and my country. In that order. Do I always make God first like I should? No, I don't. I should, but I don't. And I have to pray. I pray often to, that God maybe forgives me for those shortcomings sometimes. I'm going to go to one more break. When I come back, I'll just have a few heartfelt words, some hopeful words. We'll get away from this politics stuff, right? And this will be our last break, last little commercial break. And when we come back, I'll probably say my last farewell, and again some encouraging words from the Bible itself, and then we'll call it a night. Hey, how you doing? You guys might remember me. My name's Vinny. I'm here to tell you a little bit about my friend Jason. And this isn't about his books. I'd rather just talk to you guys about, you want to know more about the way he thinks, things he likes to write about, things he likes to talk about. Hey, look, all you gotta do, you pull up the internet, you type in this address, www.jason-e-fort.com/blog. And then you can read like 90-something posts or more. You really know what's gonna, make his brain tick? All you gotta do is read his blog. You might find things that you agree with. You might find things that you don't agree with. But I tell you what, you go visit that site. You read his thoughts. If you don't agree with him, leave a comment. Tell him what you think. And you know what? You'd be surprised. This guy, hey, look. He's a police officer. Now, I don't know about you guys, but all you got to do is listen to the way I talk. You might assume that maybe I know a few people, huh? Maybe a few people who don't like coppers. But hey, forget about it. That's another story. But anyway, you just listen to old Vinny here. All right, you go, type in that address, see what you can find. Read the guy's blog. Hey, you never know. You might even learn something. Capiche? All right, that's enough from me. You wise guys go elsewhere. Welcome back one last time. What can I say to say kind of a farewell and yet leave some encouragement? My whole theme to my writing, basically what I wanted the theme of the show, The Fortress, to be about all along was revealing light in the darkness. Or that is my theme in my writing. That's my theme in the novels I write. Revealing light in the darkness. If you think about a dark room, if you think about just a time where, a situation where you would be surrounded by darkness, I mean, that could be frightening, right? I mean, we're talking about there's no light around. You can't see anything. If you've ever been in a cave with complete darkness, you know what I'm talking about. But maybe you've been in a power failure and all of a sudden your surroundings look completely foreign to you because everything's so dark. And then you have a faint light. Maybe you light a candle and it lights up the room. That one little bit of light gives you hope. It gives you something to look to. It gives you something to hope for. Because if you have that little flame on a candle, if you can find some other candles, you can spread that light. You can light another wick. And then you light another one. You can make it brighter and brighter. What if something like this show, something like my writing, what if one of you out there who is listening has just heard one or two words from me that made sense, but not because I said it, but because God happened to affect my life to give me the words to say. And that whatever piece of information about Jesus affects you in a positive way. All right, so that news, that little piece of info about Jesus is your little small flame. And you go and share that with somebody else. And then you share it with somebody else. Till that fire light in the darkness grows and grows and grows. I don't know about you guys, but that's pretty hopeful imagery. That's what I want to do. That's what I pray other people out there listening, that's what I pray other people do. That's what I pray we can get other believers to do. To go and make disciples of all nations. Yeah, two verses really one verse in Isaiah 40:31, but 30 and 31 go together well. And so, I did want to read that. I like to read most of the time when I quote the Bible, just because I don't want to leave anything out. And my wife and my son will tell you my short-term memory is horrible. Although they should be long-term by now, shouldn't it? Anyway. But listen. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. Here's the hopeful part. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. To me, that is just such hopeful language. When I was a kid, I think I did share this on the show. I might have just shared it in a blog post. But when I was growing up, I was deathly afraid of heights. But I would just think to myself, when I would go to the mountains with my family, my dad would hold up my little brother on top of his shoulders, and Daniel's just looking out on the world like, hey, it's pretty neat up here. And me, I'm clinging to some rock over to the side, turning white as a ghost. And I'm thinking to myself, this sure would be easier if I were a bird. And so when I hear those words, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, they will soar on wings like eagles. Man, that's awesome. That's hopeful language. It gives you something to look forward to. That verse has always kind of just hit home with me. I'm telling you, when I get up high, my legs start to quiver. I get that little quiver going, that little vibration in my legs that I can't see. They just kind of turn into jelly and wobble. That's one thing I can I'll be honest with you. If I had to try to make an arrest, somebody that's resisting up high, whoever I'm arresting is going to have a big time advantage, because I will move like a different person, a different animal, very slow. I'd almost be sloth-like. So there's really one very hopeful verse there. But then I'm going to go all Tim Tebow on you. Because let's listen to this. I know you guys have heard it. You've probably seen it. And, what are those, the eye black things underneath a football player's eyes? Old Tim Tebow would wear the verse John 3:16. He would wear it right under his eyes, and everybody would see it. What I admire the most about it was he would do it, unashamed, which is rare, more and more rare these days for celebrities, for those who are in the spotlight. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life." Are there any words that are any brighter to reveal light in the dark world we live in? Let's break that down. For God, the creator of the universe, he so loved the world that he created. He gave his one and only Son, Jesus Christ, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, shall not die, but have eternal life. Oh, sure, we might perish physically, in the physical sense, in this material world we have right here. But we get to live with our Father in heaven forever. all we have to do is turn to him and truly believe. See, I believe that if we truly believe in Jesus as our Savior, then we will do God's will anyway. Because our faith, once you truly give yourself over to something, you can't help but do it. Follow God's will. But you have to believe. But at least there's not something you have to do 3 times a day and 7 times a day and this many times a day and this many times with this hand or that hand. And at least you don't have to be obsessive compulsive about it. I do like to point out, sure, and I already mentioned Judaism and Islam both present pretty good cases for the sovereignty of God, or in Islam's case, Allah, aka Satan, in my opinion, but that's another story. But the words love are not near as focused on. Now, love is focused on a good bit more in the Torah, in the Old Testament, but nobody covers the subject of love like Jesus Christ. So if I can leave you with anything tonight, again, go investigate more for yourself in God's Word, His holy Word, because it is the truth. The truth will set you free. I want to give anybody out there listening a chance I want to give you some hope by just pointing you in the right direction to find the truth. If you want true freedom, ironically, go forget all the politics, all politics aside. If you want true freedom, find the truth. Read the Bible. You can start with John 3:16, but you can keep going from there. You can start from Genesis. It doesn't really matter. You're going to find the truth. If you seek it, you shall find it. I'm going to miss these little talks I've gotten to share with whoever listened out there. I do know I've had some listeners. I've even had a couple comments or two comment on the video versions of these shows that I've put on YouTube. Just because I have to use like a video program that I use just to compile things together. That's part of what takes me so long. Again, I'm not tech savvy. I see this audio thing in front of me as I record this, and I'm still scratching my head. Whereas Pastor Keith could probably look at this and go, "Oh yeah, you just do this and this and this and this," and he'd be done. But anyway, I hope anybody listening out there can find hope, not in my words, but in the words of God. Pick up a Holy Bible. Try to find the truth for yourself. I challenge anybody out there. But then don't do it alone. Seek other believers. Fellowship with other people who discover or who have discovered, who have already discovered what you discover. And then share that message. Share it with others. Reveal light in the darkness to the rest of the world. Even if it's one person at a time. I'm going to close this out with a little word of prayer. And then the Fortress will sign off one last time. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this opportunity, this chance to witness to others through my voice. Thank you for the opportunity given to me. Thank you for providing Pastor Keith with the resources to have somebody from Easley, South Carolina, broadcast a little show 2,000 miles away in Dove Creek, Colorado. thank you so much for the technology to do that. Thank you for your word and its impact in my life and my family. I pray, Lord, that you can help people hear messages like what I've talked about on this show, but I pray that you help others use those words and seek the truth about you. And I pray that you reveal your light more and more throughout this world, and then we can look forward to the day that Jesus returns and evil finally meets its crashing doom. I pray all of these things, Lord, in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Thank you, all you listeners out there. Thank you for anybody who took the time to listen. Thank you for giving me a chance to be in your ear one last time. This is The Fortress, signing off. God bless you, everybody.